Hello, everybody. Casino Capital here. Long time no see. It's been a good month off from YouTube and Twitter. I've been focusing a lot in the markets, trying to plan ahead, really, thinking where we are in this Bitcoin cycle and how that relates to the strategy of what we're going to do going forward to take on the next steps. So I want to start by just looking at the Bitcoin cycle and just trying to show you where I think we're at. Bit of confusion about this, so let's look at my opinion. So as you can see here, we've got the long-term Bitcoin chart, and what I've done here is pretty crude and simple, but I just wanted to do this as an example. I've copied the cycle from the sort of whole cycle from here and the whole cycle from here, and just overlaid it onto the current Bitcoin price action. There's arguments about if the 4-year cycle's intact or not. Well, for me at the minute, it is until proven otherwise. So we can see that we peaked here at the end of 2013, end of 2017, and end of 2021. So it seems pretty clear that peaks happen every 4 years. So if we follow that logic on, we're looking towards the end of 2025, which we're coming towards the end of 2022. That's basically just under 3 years, I reckon, from where we are now. Maybe it doesn't go all the way to November, December, maybe it's October or September, but it's still nearly 3 years. So it's a hell of a long time, really. Let's just zoom in a little bit here. So if we focus in on where we're at the minute, the down move here is pretty consistent with what we've had in previous cycles. Obviously, it's always going to be slightly different, but the general trend is following. I believe that we're coming into this sort of accumulation phase, or time capitulation, as some people call it, which is sort of highlighted in this box here. So I expect that to largely last all of 2023. And as you can see, that doesn't mean that we have to stay in this box price-wise. We could go way above it. In the last cycle, we rallied from 3K to 13K. So there's no reason why we can't rally all the way up here to say 40 odd K or something, to then eventually come all the way back into it, which is what happened in this cycle. In the 2015 cycle, it was a much more of a bigger base at the bottom, and then we had a much smoother parabola up to the top. It could be obviously something completely different, and probably will be something completely different. So it could be a little average of between the two. Maybe we go a bit lower and come back up. But either way, I think this next whole year is going to be accumulation. And I think what you've got to be aware of is, I'm not a maxi. I like playing the altcoins, and I like playing the cycles. So I think you've got to be aware of how alts can perform in this stage. So if you look back at the last cycle in here, certain alts did really well. BNB did well in here. ETH did okay. Quant did very well. That just kept going. But there were certain alts like XRP that just kept going down and down and down, all the way until 2020. Even though Bitcoin had a really nice move, XRP didn't. There was ones such as Mana, that's the one I want to focus on really, because Mana, we just quickly get that. There we go. It wants to wake up. Wakey, wakey. I think it wants to load. Anyway, we'll stay back on this. Basically, the point with Mana, I was going to say, obviously, it did really well in the bull phase here. It did similar to Bitcoin. It did a 1.618 extension, which was, I can't remember how much, but it was at least 100x. Yet in this downtrend, it basically just kept making lower lows, lower lows, lower lows all the way until here. So the point I want to make here is if we assume that we're going to get something similar, obviously we can argue that it's different this time, but for me, at the minute, we're still on track. So how do you go about playing these altcoins? I think there's some incredible offers on at the minute. There's so many coins that are down 95+%, but some of them to go, let's say they go to minus 98%, that difference can be another 60-70% off from here. So you do have to be careful. I think you need to treat this zone as just always having some cash available. So if you've got an income, even better that you can just trickle in during this phase. I think it's a common mistake to make at this phase of the cycle where people will turn off and they will switch off because this time capitulation can be quite painful, especially if you're in alts and they can just keep going, making lower lows while Bitcoin and others might be moving a bit. You got to keep the focus and keep your eye on the prize, which is basically getting us up to here, which, really we're looking at into 2024 until we start picking up. I've got this little aeroplane symbol here just to basically say an important point as well. So I did some analysis and I got some of this from a guy called Lauda on Twitter, who's a good follow. Looking at the alts that did the big moves last cycle, so the big 100x plus moves, basically it came down to the 25% were pre-existing coins that were around in the last cycle, such as Mana, but 75% of those coins like AVAX, Sol, Matic, Axie, Polkadot, those kind of coins, most of them came out, if you can do this research yourself, but they largely came out in this area here. Well, obviously it was this area here. So we're looking at the sort of late summer of 2020, and not just from a time perspective, which is interesting from a fib perspective. This is when BTC basically got back above the 618. So it's back in the bullish half. And obviously all of those projects are backed by VC money. No doubt, obviously got released just as BTC was about to explode for them to get the maximum return possible. And so I've just denoted this point in the cycle here, assuming that there's a chance we get something similar. In other words, when the price starts to pick up, this is when roughly this kind of zone is when we're likely going to see some new altcoin projects that we've not heard of yet. They haven't been released. It's over a year and a half away. And so I think the mistake that people might make is use up all of the cash here in projects that are old and may not have the narrative in the next cycle and have no dry powder left to deploy at this important stage here, because this is where the real business happens. For the new projects, there will be some, like I said, 25% roughly. You can accumulate down in here for sure, and I'm going to be doing that. But I also think having some cash available for this part of the cycle here, because people think of this in a year and a half, if we just get this sideways action, even if we get some moves up and down, it is exhausting. I remember this phase and this cycle was exhausting. Okay for Bitcoin, but for some of the alts, just kept going down and down. It was exhausting. You think you're tired now from having a year of down, we'll add another year and a half on top. It is exhausting, and this is the thing, you have to keep mentally strong and keep cash available. So having an income or just keeping some on the side is going to be a good idea in my opinion, because if this follows, we're looking well into 2025, towards the end of 25 before we hit the peak. So I think that's got to be the base case for the minute. Obviously things can change. I think there's some interesting signs in the macro as well that are sort of opening up. We've got the ISM really low, so the business cycle is right at the bottom. We've got China, which obviously we've had the whole supply chain issue in China, which, the Fed are trying to crush demand to try and meet the poor supply from China. So if China can open up and the supply chain issues get resolved and inflation comes down, do the Fed need to be as tight? I don't think so. And I think that's what can spot this next business cycle, essentially. So interesting things to keep an eye on. I'm going to do a big video with Amphipod Crypto on January the 2nd, where we're going to go through a load of different altcoins that we believe have got a lot of potential, high quality, incredible charts, incredible use cases, partners, and users. But obviously, because of the stage of the cycle, they're down so heavily. And there's some of those that I want to be accumulating in this next year. So I'm going to go with some of my best picks, in my opinion, but also being mindful of the fact that we also do need to keep cash for when some of the new darlings get born in the next cycle, which is likely, in my opinion, if the last cycle is anything to go by, it's going to be in this zone in here in 2024. So yeah, hope everyone's well. Good to catch up with you all again. Stay tuned, and I'm going to release this video on January the 2nd. Merry Christmas if I don't see you, and a Happy New Year. See you next time.